There's a spectrum. One side, you're a woke activist, and on the other side, you're an ableist, So you can't really win. The middle is usually the sweet spot. Everything has a nuance, the gray area. And if you're a content creator and you're playing the game of content creation, be prepared to get grouped in with one side or the other. Checking my hair, guys. I'm back from Miami. That's why I'm rocking my Miami shirt. Snakeskin, baby. Gives me power, just like my long hair. But yeah, I just got back from Miami on a little trip with my wife. And I'm feeling good. I'm recording this episode at nighttime because I didn't get a chance to before I left. And I owe you guys a solo episode. So here I am at night. So that's why the lighting's a little different. But I think it's kind of cool. It's actually kind of very like Miami-esque, Speaking of Miami, when I put some, let's complete the look here. I got the sunglasses on now at nighttime. I'm going to queue up some pictures from my trip. So here are some pictures. And for those of you not watching this on YouTube, in this photo, I am smoking a cigar looking cool as hell. And this picture, I'm on the beach rocking the same snakeskin shirt. Beautiful weather there on South Beach, Miami. Here's a photo of my wife. Here's another photo of my wife enjoying the swimming pool. And here's a photo of me sipping on a Corona near a pool. I got palm trees behind me. Life is good. But yeah, me and my wife had a great trip down in Miami, Florida. That was my first time ever going to Florida. And I loved it, honestly. The weather was nice. The sun was out. It felt like summertime. It was kind of sad to come back to New York. In fact, it was kind of ironic. Right when I got back to New York, it was snowing. And it hasn't even really snowed this year. So it's like, bad timing, New York. You're really not selling yourself right now. You're competing against Miami. All right, sunglasses off. Miami segment is over. Or is it? All right, but back to normal, sad reality. And speaking of swimming pools, let me talk about another fun event that involved being in the water. I went to my friend, Joe Such. He's been on this podcast. He's the man turning into stone. He turned a big 3-0. Big birthday to celebrate. So I had to show up and celebrate with him. He threw it at the TWA Hotel near JFK Airport. Joe, you owe me about $100 in Ubers because that's about how much it costs for me to get out there and back. But it was fun to go out there. They had a heated pool. It was freezing out, but the water was warm. Joe bought me an ice cream cone. What a nice guy. I helped Joe into the pool and we were just chilling, hanging out there. We swapped glasses. He had a pair of red tinted glasses and I wanted to see what I looked like in them. And guess what? Our prescriptions were this close. Like I could see sharp in his glasses, which is very rare because my glasses honestly are pretty thick. And these are with like frames that are, condensed down. I'm the type of person, I have to pay extra to get my glasses condensed or else they'd be, really, really thick. So it was kind of wild, the fact that we almost shared the same prescription. He was drinking booze, but since he can't drink, he did it through his feeding tube, which I found very interesting. Joe's a very interesting guy, and if you haven't yet, go check out my interview with him and go follow him and subscribe to his YouTube channel. He does interviews just like me and has a podcast, and it's great, great stuff. Controversial, though. He'll say some wild stuff. I'm not going to say he doesn't. And to be honest with you, that's kind of what I like about him. He keeps it real, or 100, as the kids say. All right, and on a different note, let me talk about the last solo episode I did because I received a lot of support, and I'm very appreciative of it because the episode was hard for me to put out. It kind of took a lot out of me. Like I still honestly feel drained from doing that episode. And I feel kind of anxious of the fact that it's even out there still, So if somehow that episode slipped through the cracks and you haven't listened to it yet, I would consider that episode an essential listen if you're a fan of this podcast, just because it kind of dives deep into my childhood and things I viewed as a kid in relation to my parents' marriage and how they both perceived and operated around my mom's retinitis pigmentosa and legal blindness. Yeah, and it's like, to be honest, like that episode drained me. I just wanted to say thanks. I don't really want to talk about that episode. I'm kind of still processing the fact that I put that episode out. So I'm glad it's out there. I feel better about it. But I guess I'm not in a phase where I really want to open up again and talk about it even more. But I did want to acknowledge that I'm appreciative of all the sweet and kind messages I got, supporting me after putting that episode out. I put that episode out just for me, honestly, but it was an amazing feeling to know that, the message of that episode resonated with other people too, and that, I wasn't alone with how I felt. So for that, I'm very thankful. And again, I'm always thankful for anyone who listens to this podcast or watches it or just watches the clips or just follows me on social media but doesn't listen to the podcast. There's all types of people, involved in, I guess this podcast and how, they consume it. So again, I'm thankful for anyone out there. And speaking of that, if you want to show your support for the podcast, I have to do this. Sorry. I have to plug merch. I have merch for sale on my website, seethroughpod.com/merch. I got a hat on there that you can buy. I have a hoodie. I have some t-shirts. I have a coffee mug. I have more merch being worked on as we speak, which will be released soon. And it's just a nice way to support the podcast. You can buy a piece of merch and gives you something tangible that you get on your end. And then I get a little bit of money on my end. It's kind of like a nice little trade, And if merch doesn't do it for you, you can support the podcast on Patreon. Basically, Patreon is like a subscriber type of deal where you pay me $5 a month, and in return, you get bonus and exclusive content that only my Patreon subscribers get. And if you don't want to spend money, that's chill too. Don't sweat it. But you can do me a favor. If you're on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to my channel. Definitely, that's the best thing you can do. Leave a comment. That kind of engagement kind of tells YouTube to kind of put my stuff out there more. On social media, you can follow me at seethroughpod. That's basically for every platform. And if you're streaming the episode, make sure to rate the podcast 5 stars, unless you don't like it. If you don't like the podcast, then I guess don't rate, because I don't want a bad score, So that would be a favor. If you don't like the podcast, don't rate. Or you can leave a review. I love reading them, and reviews, tell Apple Podcasts. It tells Spotify basically, hey, people actually listen to this thing. So maybe we should push it out there. I'm trying to grow this thing because I have fun doing this. So anyways, that was my shameless plug that I have to do. So thanks for putting up with it. All right, so let's get into the meat of this episode. And it kind of is part of my life updates. Recently, there was a video that I put out about what Mr. Beast did. If you've been living under a rock and you're not aware, Mr. Beast, a really popular YouTuber, put out a video where he cured, as he says, 1,000 people of blindness. And don't worry, I'm not going to rehash that whole thing. What I want to talk about in this episode is basically the clickbaity nature of content creation. Doing these solo episodes now, trying to grow my YouTube channel, trying to grow my social platforms. I'm playing a game here. There's a game to be played and I'm playing it. So I wanted to talk about that in relation to the Mr. Beast video, because the controversy there was his title, Mr. Beast cures 1,000 people of blindness, or 1,000 blind people see for the first time. Both are stretching the truth. And I think that's what a lot of people were frustrated with, is just the way he worded things. Obviously, providing 1,000 cataract surgeries is great. It's amazing. But when you say 1,000 people see it for the first time, is that even real? Like, it's not like they were lights out blind and now they can see. He paid for cataract surgery. He didn't reinvent the wheel. Tons of people have cataract surgeries. It's been around for a while. But yeah, just the way he spun it kind of pissed people off. And, you know, for example, like when I first saw the title, I clicked on it and it was like, oh, let me see what this is. Maybe it's something that I can utilize. And then I was like, then I realized it was just cataract surgery. And I was like, oh, that's it? Really? Anyways, again, I'm not going to go deep into that scenario. You guys already are well aware of that. But I guess I want to talk about just the clickbaity nature of things, you know, the title game, you know, what kind of title are you going to write for your video? Like, for example, for this episode, I made a really clickbaity title and I had the clickbaity cover. You know, that's silly, but it's true. You know, that's how it is. That's how the game is. And there's a game to be played. I guess the reason why I want to dive into this and talk about this specifically and use up, you know, precious time on this solo episode to bring this up is because it's a big deal in the sense of how I'm going to operate this podcast, you know, moving forward. And what you'll probably notice, you know, you'll see me try new things and post this way or this title and use this hashtag here and post at this time of day. And bottom line is I'm always trying new ways to grow and get more engagement on my videos, my posts, etc. because that's the name of the game. You know, I'm trying to grow this thing, so I have to play the game. And if you're a content creator out there or you're considering being a content creator, if you're not willing to play the game, you might want to reconsider what you're doing or planning on doing because it's a grind even when you're playing the game. What I mean by that is if you're not willing to post regularly, and to be honest, the algorithm rewards daily posts and sometimes multiple posts daily. So you got to have content on the regular ready to go. You know, I'm scheduling posts, you know, weeks in advance, honestly, so I can kind of just live my life and something gets posted. You know, you got to think far in advance. And then you also got to post to social media. You got to use certain hashtags. You got to invite people to be collaborators. You know, you got to pick even thumbnails for your social media posts. Oh, what's the description? You got to do your video description. You got to do your alt text. What hashtags are you using? What time of day are you posting? All these things kind of factor in to the game that is content creation. I guess what I'm trying to say is you can't be a passive creator if you're actually trying to be, you know, a full-time, you know, I guess influencer or content creator, whatever you want to call it. You can't be a passive creator to get that full-time status. It just won't happen. And I just don't recommend it for you if you're not willing to learn, you know, the tech and theories behind the content itself. You know, I'm sharing this because I think a lot of my listeners, you know, are on social media, they're on YouTube, and you all are trying to grow there. So I just wanted to give my hot take on that. And on that note, if you are playing the game and you are making content and you're putting it out there publicly for the world to find and for YouTube to push out there, I hope you have thick skin because you're going to get some negative comments. And I don't know if you guys even know, but I get some really negative comments online. When I first started this project that is see-through, you know, I kind of thought in my head that once I have trolls, you know, in my comment section, that I made it. I definitely haven't made it, but I definitely have trolls in my comments. On the video I did about Mr. Beast and what he did, you know, I got on YouTube, I had 35 comments, and most of them are complaining or telling me that I'm complaining, you know. Here's a comment that said, "Am I complaining? No." Then literally proceeds to complain. How can I make this about me? This guy had a great comment. He said, "Society's ignorance is their problem. Reading video titles is not research on a topic." This guy's like, "Bro, are you serious? Mr. Beast did something most of these millionaires and celebrities won't even do. Clickbait is crucial for people to watch the video so he can receive more funds for his videos and charities." And that's actually a good point about what I was talking about with playing the game. Mr. Beast, why did he post that title. He wanted you to click on the video. Without the click on the video, he doesn't get his views, which doesn't get the money from the ad revenue that plays from the ads when you watch his content, because his channel's monetized on YouTube. So yeah, that's all it boils down to. Is like, what can I write as a title that's going to get you to click on my video? It's smart, but at what cost? You know, if you're misleading people and they click on something thinking that it's something else, but it's not really fair. So in my opinion, there's like an art form to writing a title that is clickable, that entices you to click on it, but it is based in reality and in relation to what's being presented in the video. All right, so now let's pull up the same video, but on TikTok. Stop hating on Mr. Beast. Why don't you go help some people? I try, man. I do, I try. Sorry I have such a small platform. Stop complaining. Do you help a lot of people? Don't make videos again. Go do something better. Bro's complaining and basically says he didn't do enough. Get a life. Go worry about yourself. And if you have a life, we'll worry about yourself. Hater. They call me a hater. One guy says, no one asked. That's true. Elon Musk, I believe, said he was working on it via brain chip implants. I got to learn more about that. You know, I think that would be really cool to research. Maybe I'll cover that in a future episode. A lot of people saying they have retinitis pigmentosa. RP gang, baby. Just my point is, in the video, you know, which I'll play actually. I'll play the video because maybe you didn't catch this, but here's what I said. Did Mr. Beast actually cure 1,000 blind people? Kind of. Mr. Beast provided 1,000 cataract surgeries for people who couldn't afford them on their own. Am I complaining? Not at all. That's super dope. But I do worry that the clickbaity / charity porn-esque nature of his video will cause society to think that most blind people, all they need is a little bit of money and a simple surgery and their vision can be cured. And that's just not the case. For example, I have retinitis pigmentosa, which doesn't have a cure. And I'm part of millions of people who are facing this reality. But this video isn't about me. I just want to say, Mr. Beast, if you want to help the blind community as a whole, consider linking up with the organization Foundation Fighting Blindness, an organization that raises a lot of money to help fund some research and clinical trials in hopes of curing these eye diseases that don't have a cure. But again, major props to Mr. Beast. Stay transparent, everyone. But yeah, I mean, that's what I said. I basically gave Mr. Beast credit in the video, and I still get flack for it. But at the end of the day, you know, those comments just add engagement to my post. And I think that's a tactic. Virality, I don't even know if that's a word, but it's easier to make a piece of content go viral if it's divisive. You know, that's why, you know, someone like Andrew Tate was seen so much and his content had so much views online because it was divisive. People were in the comments arguing, you know, and that's essentially what news media outlets are doing, you know, where it's like, you're either, you know, you're a left-leaning news company or a right-leaning, you know, you're trying to basically, you know, create this, you know, war, you know, culture war between people and create some divisiveness because it's going to fuel, you know, the desire to consume the content, which will sell the advertisements. It's all a game at the end of the day. Clickbait's a game, news is a game, everything's a game, basically. My most viewed content has been divisive. It's like I made a video about Andrew Tate parking in, you know, handicap space. That's one of my most played videos. This Mr. Beast video did really well. So being divisive pays off, honestly, as a content creator. And it's a tactic being used by creators. Like, what can I post that's going to piss people off enough that they comment? And then maybe, you know, that sweet spot is half the people in the comments agree with you and half the people disagree with you. And then those people start arguing with each other. And that engagement, you know, tells, you know, the platform it's on, hey, people like this. People are engaging with this. Let's push it out to more people. And it grows and grows and grows. And that's why you see so much divisive and political content out there, because the engagement rewards it. It seems like you can't win when it comes to social media and this kind of content. And what I mean by that is, like, you may be familiar, but I had a series of videos called Ableist or Chill. essentially where I reviewed, a video that's popular online, usually something that's funny, and I would review it and decide if it's ableist, meaning discriminatory to the disabled, or chill, meaning it's just funny. It's just all fun and games. Lighten up if you're offended. And even if I gave the chill verdict on the content, just the fact that ableism was in my title would give people the impression that I was calling it ableist. It's like people were so quick to make judgment on this kind of content. Like recently I posted Snoop Dogg, I'll play you the video and then I'll show you some comments I got. But this was an old video that I put out recently just because I was curious. I was like, let me put that out on YouTube and see the kind of reaction I get. So here's the video.
And here is Mester of Germany, his first attempt in the javelin in the F41 category. And he's hurled that one well beyond 30 meters.
Now this clip is obviously ableist, which is concerning since it has over 3 million likes and was shared by Snoop Dogg. Yeah, Snoop Dogg. And I'll keep this one simple because everyone deep down already knows what's problematic with the clip, hence the title. But these are grown men who are partaking in an athletic event that they train hard for and dedicate their lives to. With that being said, they are highly skilled at this sport. The joke here doesn't land because it's disregarding all of that just because the athletes are little people. It's downplaying their athleticism and strength, which ironically enough, the guy with the toothpicks in his shirt looks like an out of shape f***ing loser. Anyways, yeah, so for those who couldn't see that and are listening, basically Paralympic athletes throwing the javelin, they're athletes living with dwarfism, they throw the javelin, and then it cuts to toothpicks being thrown as if it was the javelins being thrown and it lands into a guy's sweater. But yeah, that's the description of it. But yeah, I posted that and I thought it was like a reasonable kind of dissection of, the video, but I straight up got destroyed in the comments, dude. Let's look at the comments. This one was a mean comment. This one was pretty mean. This man is probably still living with his parent. Emphasis on the parent because there ain't no way this man had a dad. Definitely did have a dad. I don't agree. I couldn't throw a toothpick that accurately. What a nice guy. Real life must be hard for this guy. That one person said chill AF, which is saying that my, opinion of it being ableist is wrong. It was funny to me. The world is way too soft. Of course, I'm just too soft. Bro is a Darren, Darren. I guess that's a male Karen. And how about you go talk to a dwarf and ask them about how this lands instead of standing up for people who are wholly capable of making their voices heard. In the full video I did, I had Toria Jones from Just a Little Pod come on and talk about it, and she had the same opinion I had. So you're wrong there. But yeah, anyways, it's like, that's what you get, So if you want to be a content creator, you're going to put stuff out there. You're going to take some risk. If you share your opinion, if you give your opinion on something, you're going to hear about it. You're going to counter people who have different thoughts than you, which I honestly think is cool. It's kind of fun and exciting sometimes to see what people say. And that leads me to my hot take on all of this, content creation in the disability universe. Let's bring it back into that. You can't win. You post something like this where you think you're being reasonable, and the Mr. Beast video, I gave him credit in the video. People just assume that I'm complaining. They see this Ableist or Chill series and they think that I'm just some like woke disability activist who's just something to roll their eyes at. And I'm not that type of person. Like if you've been following this podcast, I'm not that type of, person. I'm not like a disability activist. I'm more of just like, someone who makes a podcast and talks about, these types of things. And maybe I am. I don't know. Maybe I guess I just don't consider myself a disability activist. Maybe I am and just don't know it. But I guess what I'm trying to say is like to people on the internet, they see ableist, you get automatically you get grouped in as woke activist, on one side of a spectrum. It's like there's a spectrum. One side, you're a woke activist, and on the other side, you're an ableist, So you can't really win. I guess what I'm trying to say is like the middle is usually the sweet spot. Everything has a nuance, the gray area. And if you're a content creator and you're playing the game of content creation, be prepared to get grouped in with one side or the other. For me, I seem to get perceived as like a really annoying woke, like disability activist when I'm not that type of person. And what's kind of funny to me is that like for someone who actually is like a woke, disability activist, they would probably listen to my content or my podcast and point out a bunch of flaws that I have that I'm not even aware of and probably call me ableist. So to some, I might be considered ableist, and for some, I might be considered woke, annoying, progressive activist, So bottom line is people are going to have opinion of you one way or the other. It's just kind of fascinating, So nuance doesn't really win. But yeah, that's all I got to say about that, I guess what I would ask is like, where are you at on that spectrum? I'm curious to know as like what my listener base is like on that spectrum. On one end, you have, ableist. You're someone who's ableist. You just can't stand blind people, man. Just being around a blind person, makes you so angry. And then on the other side, you're a woke, activist. And the movie Elf, you're so into, disability advocacy that you consider the movie Elf to be ableist. You're that far into the spectrum. Where do you live in that world? I'm curious to know on that spectrum where people are. But with that said, let's move on to something that's also divisive. Let's talk about the word transabled. All right, so in this episode, I'm talking about content that's divisive, and let's add some fuel to the fire here. Let's talk about, the transabled community. And if you don't know what the transabled community is or what transabled is, transabled basically means that you identify as someone with a disability even when you do not live with a disability. And when you typically hear the word trans, you think of the, LGBTQ plus community, which, I got it right. So yeah, I want to talk about transabled people, people who identify as disabled. And what I mean by that is like, for example, there's a woman out there who identified as being blind when she wasn't. And she went as far as pouring like bleach in her eyes to become blind. And there's another person out there who identified as being an amputee and basically caused harm to his leg enough to where it had to be, surgically removed. So basically, essentially, it's like you identify someone with a disability when you don't have one. So then you go through sometimes extreme lengths to kind of modify your body to make you actually have the disability. Here's a page I found. I don't know how much like validity this page has, but it has some interesting facts on, the transabled community. Yes, all right. So transabled is an umbrella term for those who feel as though they should be disabled. It can also be used for disabled people who feel like they shouldn't be disabled. That's interesting. You know what? I saw a tweet that Molly Burke did the other day where she said, does anyone else out there feel like they're a sighted person living in a blind person's body? It's not exactly what that's being said here, but it's kind of something. So maybe Molly Burke is transabled. I don't know. I'm just joking, but that was an interesting question to ask though, Molly. So the history of the word transabled. Let's get into this. Is this real or is this some shit that's made up, So the term was created in 2004 by Sean O'Connor. It has been used by people with and without body integrity identity disorder since then. Okay, so Body integrity identity disorder. We'll find out what that is later, I'm guessing. Has a flag, the Transabled flag, has 6 stripes, Center of the flag has the white stick person drawing of someone in a wheelchair, classic. Must be official, right, if it has a flag. Okay, let's talk about the perceptions and discrimination. Many feel as though the term transabled is a mockery of disabled people. They think that wanting, in quotation marks, wanting a disability is making light of the struggles of cis disabled people. That's a word I have not heard yet. Cis disabled. So yeah, for those who don't know, cisgender people are, someone like myself who identifies as a, man. I was born a man and I identify with the sex, I was born with or born into. I don't know how to say stuff, this kind of stuff. So if I mess up, my bad. But anyways, now they're saying you can be cis disabled, meaning you're cis disabled, meaning you identify as someone with a disability and you were born with a disability. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think that word's legit. I think it's just someone coined it. All right, but moving on. However, being transabled isn't typically as simple as just wanting a disability. It is a feeling like you were always meant to have the disability. This can come with the same kind of dysphoria a transgender person might experience. This often leads to depression, and the heavy stigma surrounding transabled people only leads to more self-hate, despite the fact that they cannot control how they perceive their body. Another argument against transabled people is that they would unnecessarily harm themselves if they transition and would hurt their chances at a quote-unquote normal life. Many people think transabled people are too irrational to make choices about their own body. However, this only pushes the idea that disabled people cannot have good lives. Most procedures that would impact a person's body, such as amputating a limb, can be done safely with proper medical care, but with the stigma against transabled people, this care is nearly non-existent. Some transabled people may end up doing dangerous things to themselves in order to help ease the dysphoria. Transgender people often want to remove healthy body parts too, but since being transgender is more socially acceptable, it is deemed normal for them. There are plenty of transabled people who do not identify with a physical disability either. For example, identifying with a mental disorder with no physical effects. And there are many who have no desire to transition. Okay, I'm going to keep this going. There's one last part here I want to cover. It says body integrity identity disorder, or BIID, or BID, is a mental disorder defined by someone feeling as though they should have a disability. Some people with body integrity identity disorder identify as transabled while others don't. Some people who identify as transabled have body integrity identity disorder while others don't. That seems very confusing and unnecessary description, which is very common for today's, language around things. But yeah, I don't know. It's like whoever wrote this is obviously pro-transabled people being able to have medical procedures. So like, for example, if someone wanted to amputate, a limb, they should be able to do it safely. In the same way, their argument in the same way that, someone, someone who is trans can have, a surgery that alters their body's physiology, and that's illegally allowed. Same way a transabled person should be able to make themselves blind or amputate a limb. So be it. And what do you guys think about that? Should you be able to modify your body if you want to that extreme? Should you be able to, if you want, you just want 3/4 of a leg, should you be able to do that? Personally, when it comes to my thoughts on this, it seems like if you were to go to that extreme, you have something, psychologically, wrong with you. Hence, body integrity identity disorder. It seems like that word is interchangeable with transabled. transabled just seems kind of like this progressive term to describe body integrity identity disorder. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing. It seems like it's a disorder. It's a dysphoria, as they say, and should be treated as such. I don't think we should just let someone who has an irrational idea of cutting their leg off just do it because it's going to make them psychologically feel better. Especially if, it gets even more complicated because it's like, let's say a transabled person has a surgery done that makes them disabled. Can they claim disability if it's self-inflicted? I don't know. That kind of, these kind of questions are going to be asked. But I think honestly, I don't think this is that big of a deal. And what I mean by that is I don't think this is like a big problem. I don't think that there's that many, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't feel like there's that many transabled people out there. I think that, the whole trans issue, in politics that's happening right now, I think that's what's fueling this. It's a hot topic. And I think, the right, kind of wants to prove, their point through, this transabled argument in a sense that see, where does it end? If people want to cut off their leg, but then where does it end? And I think it's kind of being used to push, a right-wing agenda of, kind of anti-trans. I think it's a little bit anti-trans to bring this up. To that point, I want to cover a article from the National Review, which is a conservative publication, and it is called "Here Comes Transableism." Keep in mind, this is a right-leaning article, so it's going to be from a conservative viewpoint. Some people may think that transgenderism is the end of the road for the radical individual recreationism. Wow, you see some big words here. Once surgically altering people who feel they are the different sex than they were. When born becomes normalized, we will soon be ready for the next abyss. What is that? Transableism. So this is kind of my point. I think transableism, or transable, the word and the idea of it, is being used by the right, being used by conservatives. By the way, I politically am center. I'm moderate. So I'm not biased here. And I try to be unbiased as a host. Shocker to some out there. They may be like, oh, Lance isn't, super left or whatever. But, I'm in the center. And that's about as far as I will describe my political leanings, because I don't want to be annoying. Transableism is a relatively new term for what is known as body integrity identity disorder. The point of changing the identifier from a psychiatric condition to an advocacy term is to harness the stunning cultural power of gender ideology to the cause of allowing doctors to treat BIID patients by amputating healthy limbs, snipping spinal cords, or destroying eyesight. There have already been cases of rogue doctors disabling BIID patients and bioethicists advocating such actions, but now the idea is beginning to break into the popular media. Canada's National Post just published a story on the coming trend, becoming disabled by choice, not chance. Okay, I'm gonna skip through some parts of this. Cutting off healthy body parts not involved with sex is the next logical step after transgenderism. This is that classic slippery slope kind of argument. Well, if you start here, then what's next and where does it end? So this article, basically saying once transgenderism is normalized, then the next step is transableism, basically trying to scare everyone into thinking that this is where society's going. And it says, transgender activists are not buying it so far. It says, this has been met with great resistance in both the disability activist community and in transgender circles. And it says, they tend to see transabled people as dishonest people who try to steal resources from the community, people who would be disrespected by denying or fetishizing or romanticizing disability reality. Sabero says, adding people in both transgender and disabled circles tend to make judgmental or prejudicial statements about transabled people. Barrow, who's the author of that article on Canada's National Post, says, he himself is disabled and transgender. He believes the transgender community distanced itself because it has worked very hard to pathologize. I don't even know. Fuck, I can't even say that word. What's known as gender dysphoria and sought its removal from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, blah, blah, blah. You know, the author of this article for National Review, he goes on to say, sorry, I don't see the difference in principle. If reality can be defined by one subjective inner state instead of objective biological reality, why permit one transition and not the other? Indeed, the only distinction I perceive between the two is that gender ideology is backed by the LGBT political juggernaut, and transableism is not. But give it time. Once transgenderism becomes just another lifestyle, transableism won't be far behind. But yeah, it's interesting stuff. It's you know, I guess I'm trying to just get people thinking about this. You know, you probably already heard of that term before, but I find it kind of fascinating, the idea of like, should it be allowed even, you know, in the medical world, like should doctors be allowed to make the modifications, and how should it be perceived? Is it a body, you know, dysphoria type of deal? Is it a disorder, or is it being transabled? In the same way, you know, you can be transgender or, you know, call it gender dysphoria. You know, there's arguments for both sides. People have differing opinions. I personally don't think transableism is a good thing and should be accepted in society. I don't think that's a good idea. But I also don't think it's actually that prevalent. In fact, when I was doing research on this, I don't think there's that many transabled people out there, because I kept seeing the same couple of examples over and over and over again. You know, the lady who was on Dr. Phil who put like cleaner in her eyes, and a couple other people that you just see over and over again as these examples. There obviously isn't that many transabled people because the same examples keep getting recycled in each clip talking about it, or article or whatever. But I do think right-leaning, you know, media personalities and companies and are using it to kind of to make people more fearful of where society's going, and to kind of create more, you know, anger towards, you know, the trans community. And that's just my opinion. If you know someone who's transabled or know of someone who's transabled, let me know. I'm curious. I just have a hunch that there's not that many people out there who would publicly identify as transabled. But anyways, that wraps up this solo episode. I hope you found what I talked about interesting. I did. I thought it was a nice episode. I had fun doing this. You know, living life with snakeskin shirts is fun stuff. I highly recommend it. Go get yourself a snakeskin shirt. You know, go to Miami, smoke a cigar, live a little. You know, I hope my audience out there is living a little bit, having some fun. Again, go buy some merch. You know, to seethroughpod.com/merch. You know, you can join Patreon like I talked about. You know, make sure to subscribe to the channel, follow on social media. You know, the handle's at seethroughpod. Leave a review if you're streaming the episode. Follow the podcast on the streaming service you listen to it on. Like the video on YouTube. Comment on YouTube. Do what you want. Do what you can to help me in this podcast. I'm appreciative of you. Thanks for listening. I got a really great episode coming up with a big guest, so get excited for the next episode. And I'm stoked on where this podcast is going, and I'm thankful that you're here to come along with me on this journey. If you need me, reach out, DM me. You can DM me on Instagram or whatever social platform, or you can email me at the seethroughpodcast@gmail.com. I'm not sure there's anything else left for me to plug. I think I just did it all. That's pretty intense. That's it for this episode. That's it. Thanks again. Stay transparent, everyone.